Alright guys, so we have PHP set up, and what I want to do now is just look at some of the fundamentals, not so much PHP 7 but just the language in general. So a lot of things that most of you probably already know, which you can just kind of look at as a refresher. And for those of you that don't know a lot of the basics of PHP, this is where we can talk a little bit about that. All right, so things like variables, arrays, functions, conditionals, just the fundamentals of pretty much any programming language. All right, so what I did was I created a folder in my server root in the www folder called dev, and I created a file called index.php. All right, so go ahead and get that set up. And this is all I have right here is echo dev. And I'm sure most of you have seen Echo before. Basically, it just prints out into the browser. And what we're printing out is a string. Okay, we have these quotes here, which tells PHP that we want to handle this as a string. All right, we can also echo out numbers. Okay, we can echo out numbers without having to put quotes around them. And then, of course, we have variables and constants. So a constant is basically a placeholder for a value that you know is not going to change. A variable you can change later on. A constant you want to make sure isn't going to change. So let's say define, which is the function we use to create a constant, and something like URL. Okay, most of the time constants are going to be all uppercase. So that's the first parameter, the actual constant we want to use. The second one is going to be the value. So let's say hello. We'll say hello.com. All right, and then underneath that, let's say echo URL. Save that, reload, and we get hello.com. All right, so that's a constant. So if we want to comment something out, we can use // but this is only going to be used for commenting out one line. If you want to comment out multiple lines, you can use / and then the asterisk, and then at the end asterisk and /. Alright, so now let's talk about variables. Okay, variables have to begin with a $sign in PHP. And let's create a variable called num1, and we're going to set it to a number. Okay. Now if we want to spit this out, we can just say echo num1, and that's going to throw out 33. Okay, we can create another one. Let's say num2, set that to 50. And then we could do echo num1 plus num2. Okay, you can use variables in math functions. So now we get 83. All right. So variables hold one value, but if you want something to hold multiple values, you can create an array. So to create an array, let's say my array 1, and we'll set that to a set of brackets, and we're going to throw some numbers in here. Okay, so this gives us an array of numbers. Now to print an array out in the browser, you want to use print r, print underscore r. Okay, we'll pass in my array 1, save, reload, and you can see it passes, it shows us the array. If you want to access a certain value in this array, we can do that. We can say echo my array 1, and then we're going to have some brackets, and then whatever element you want. So let's put a 1 in here. We reload, that gives us 35. Now since we put 1 in here, why did we get the second one? Okay, we got 35. The reason for that is arrays are 0 based. So that means that it starts at 0 here, and then 1, 2, 3. So if we wanted the very first value, we would have to use 0. Okay, we reload, and that gives us 22. Alright, and there's also another way to create an array. So we'll say my array 2, and then we're going to set it to the word array, and then some parentheses, and then in there we can put our values. Okay, so if I want to change this to 2, that should give us 33. All right, so that's that. Those are very basic arrays, and of course you can use strings. I'll say hi, hello, and good morning. Okay, if we go ahead and save that, reload, we get hi. Okay, it's giving us the very first value. Another thing we can do is what's called an associative array. So let's say my array 3, and we'll set this to array, and then we're going to have key value pairs. So let's say John, and then we're going to set that. We're going to do an equals and then a greater than, and let's say this is an array of people and their age. Okay, so we'll put 23. Next one, we'll say Ben is 44, and let's say Matt is 33. All right, now if we wanted to access John's age, what we could do here is change this to John. Okay, save that, reload, and that didn't, oh, we need my array 3. Okay, so that gives us 23. Okay, John is 23. So that's an associative array. So let's move on to concatenation. Now, if you know JavaScript, you probably know the plus sign is used for concatenating strings and variables and numbers. Well, in PHP we use the dot. So let me give you an example. So let's say we have a variable called age, and we set that to 23. And then what we'll do is echo a string. We'll say I am, first of all, we'll just hard code it. We'll say 23 years old. Okay, if we reload, we get I am 23 years old, but the 23 is just part of the string. What if we want this variable? Well, one thing we could do is use double quotes and then change this to age. Okay, that's going to give us I am 23 years old. Now, if we had single quotes here, which I usually prefer, that doesn't work. It just gives us age as a string. So what we need to do would be concatenate. So we want to end the string with a quote and then put a dot to concatenate the variable. On this side, we have to do the same thing. We want the dot and then start the string again. Okay, so we reload, and we get I am 23 years old. Alright, so that's how we can concatenate. Now I'm just going to comment this stuff out. I'm keeping all this code just so you guys can have it for a reference. Okay, so now let's take a look at if-else statements. Alright, so we'll create a variable called let's call it age, and we'll set it to 45. Alright, now we want to check this age, so we're going to create an if statement. We're going to say if age is equal to 45, we'll just echo out a string, and we'll say that is correct. Okay, let's try that. Whoops. That's the wrong page. Okay, so we get that is correct. If I change, let's change this here to 43. Reload, and we get nothing. Okay, this isn't true, so this doesn't run. Now, if we want something to run, even if this is wrong, then we can add an else. Okay, then we'll just say echo that is wrong. Okay, we reload, and we get that is wrong. So we don't have to just compare. And by the way, when you're comparing, you want to use double equal sign. When you're assigning something, you use the single equal sign. All right, but we could say if age is greater than 43, and we get that is correct. Okay, we can also have multiple conditions. So if we want to say and we'll say and age is equal to 45. Actually, we'll say 46. Let's reload, and we get that as wrong because however, it is over 43. It is not equal to 46. If we change that to 46, then we get, wait a minute. Oh, I forgot the dollar sign. Okay, then we get that as correct. Now, let's change this to 45. So now this is going to be wrong because they're not both true. But if we want, we can test to say if one or the other is true by replacing the and with or, which is represented with double pipes. Okay, so if we reload that, we get that as correct. Okay. So, and that's because even though it's not equal to 45, it is greater than 43. So that's an if-else statement. So the next thing I want to look at are functions. Okay, a function is basically a block of code that you can create that you can run at a later time. So for instance, let's say function, and we'll call this one say hello. And in here, all we'll do is just echo out hello world. Okay, if I save that and we run it, nothing happens because we're just declaring the function. We're not actually running it. To run it, we just want to put out the function name and then parentheses. Okay, if we reload that, we get hello world. Now we can also use arguments. Okay, so in our function declaration here, let's go ahead and pass in a variable called words. And then down here, I'm going to replace this hard-coded string with that variable. All right, now if we go and run it how it is, we get an error saying that we're missing an argument. So we want to input in here, let's say, hi there. Okay, we reload and we get hi there because that's what it's doing. It's echoing out whatever parameter is being passed in. Okay, so that's a just really simple fundamental function. So next thing is loops. Okay, and I know we're going kind of fast here, but I realize that a lot of you already know this stuff. All right, so with loops, there's a few different kinds. Okay, we have a for loop, while loop, and a for each loop. So let's start out with a for loop. So what we want to do here is we want to pass in 3 parameters. The first one is going to be assignment. Okay, we're going to set a variable called I. We're going to set it to 0. Okay, now each of these parameters are separated with a semicolon. The next one's going to be the condition. So we'll say as long as I is, let's say, less than 10. Okay, so that's the condition. And the last one here is the increment. So we're going to say I++. What that does is every time this loop runs, it's going to make it's going to add 1 to whatever I is. So it'll add 1 and then it'll run the code down here until this is no longer true. Okay, till I is no longer less than 10. So in here, all we're going to do is just echo out the I variable. All right, so let's save it and run. And you can see we get 0 up to 9. Now the reason it stops at 9 is because the conditional is as long as I is less than 10. Alright, 9 is less than 10. When it gets to 10, this is no longer true, so it stops. Alright, so hopefully that makes sense. And of course we can concatenate in here a string. We'll say, we'll just put the text number and then just put a dot there. And let's also concatenate on the other side a line break. Okay, you can put HTML in here. Alright, so now we get number 0 all the way through number 9. If we wanted to actually include 10, we can do I is less than or equal to 10. Okay, reload. Now it actually goes to 10. So that's a for loop. Now a while loop is very similar. Okay, the difference is we don't set the variable inside the parameter. We also don't do the increment inside there. So first thing we'll do is set I. We'll set it equal to 0. and then we're going to say while, and then the condition. So it's while I is less than 10, then we're going to echo I. Alright, and then outside of the loop, I'm sorry, not outside, at the end of the loop, we're going to say I++. I don't know why I said that this goes outside. It doesn't. It goes in. Alright, so let's go ahead and save that, reload, and again we get 0 through 9. Alright. Oh, I said it wasn't included in the parameters. Okay, it is actually included in the while loop. So the last one I want to show you is for each. Now for each it's made to work with an array. So let's create an array. We'll just say my array 1, and let's set this to just some random numbers. And then down here, what we want to do is loop through here and spit out each one. So we'll say for each. Actually, I think it'd make more sense if we called this numbers. And then what we'll do is say for each numbers as number. Then we want to echo number. Oops. Alright, save that, reload, and actually let's put a line break here. And now you can see that it looped through and it output each value of this array. Alright, that's a for each loop. So I think I'm going to stop it here. These are just the core basics of PHP. And again, I know that a lot of you know this. I just wanted to just kind of do a quick refresher. And then in the next section, we're going to move on to PHP 7.